to America Reads Fun Learning Activities for Kids. We are college students who create learning activities for kids. Our activities are focused on reading, writing, and math. Thank you for joining us to learn today. Hi second graders! My name is Lexi, and in today's video we are going to read this fun little story called The Seahorse and His Home. After reading the story, we are going to come up with some questions on these little index cards. Once we create our questions, we are going to answer them using complete sentences. So get your thinking caps on and let's get started with today's video. It's time for us to read our story, The Seahorse and His Home. I'm going to read this out loud. Make sure that you're paying attention to all the details within the story. The Seahorse and His Home. The seahorse lives at the bottom of a coral reef. He loves to eat shrimp. The seahorse does not have fins like normal fish. He swims like a rocking chair. Sometimes the seahorse gets scared because sharks like to eat him. The seahorse hides in seaweed where he is safe. The seahorse loves his home because it is very colorful and he has lots of other seahorse friends that are there too. That was such a good story! Now that we have all this information from the story, let's think about some questions that we might ask. Here on the table, you can see that I have 6 different index cards with 6 different question words. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. First, why don't we start with the who card? What question can we make from our story starting with the word who? Let's think back to our story. Well, we can say, who was the story about? I'm going to write that on our card. Who is the story about? Who is the story about? Now we have to answer our question. Looking back at our story, we note the title is The Seahorse and His Home. So the answer to our question, who is the story about, is the seahorse. But whenever we answer a question, we need to have a little bit more context behind them. This means that we have to answer our questions in complete sentences. So instead of just answering it as the seahorse, we can answer as, the story is about the seahorse. On the back of the card, I'm going to write the answer. Here is our answer. The story is about the seahorse. This process is turning the question into the answer and putting part of the question in the answer. Our question was, who is the story about? And our answer is, the story is about the seahorse. Let's look at our second index card, which is the what question. Let's think back to our story at what happened within it. Let's think. We can say, what does the seahorse eat? I'm going to write that on our question card. Now, our question is, what does the seahorse eat? If we go back and look at our story, we know that the answer is shrimp because it says the seahorse likes to eat shrimp. But remember, we should be putting the question in the answer and use complete sentences. On the back of our index card, instead of just saying shrimp, we can write, the seahorse likes to eat shrimp. So our question was, what does the seahorse eat? And our answer is, the seahorse likes to eat shrimp. Let's move into our third index card, which is the when question. For this question, we have to think back to the story of when an event happened or took place. Let's take a look. A question we could ask is, when did the seahorse hide in the seaweed? I'm going to write that on our question card. Now our question is, when did the seahorse hide in the seaweed? If we look back at our story, we can see that this is really the only event that takes place within the story. Since this event is during a period of time, that is why this question fits within the when question. Again, looking back at the story, we know that the seahorse was hiding in the seaweed because the sharks were trying to eat him. Our answer would be the sharks. But remember, we should be answering incomplete sentences. We can turn this into, the seahorse hid in the seaweed when the sharks were trying to eat him. So to shorten up our answer and put it in a complete sentence, our answer becomes, the seahorse hid in the seaweed when the sharks came. This is to answer our question, when did the seahorse hide in the seaweed? On our fourth card is the question word, where. We have to think back to our story and where an event took place. Well then, let's look back at our story and figure out where an event was taking place. The only event that happens in this story is where the seahorse lives. If we look back at our story, we can see where the information is found on where the seahorse lives. We can see that the seahorse lives in a coral reef. So for our where question, our question becomes, where does the seahorse live? I am going to write that on our card. Here is our question. Where does the seahorse live? Remember, we just said, the seahorse lives in the coral reef. Instead of answering it as the coral reef, we can write it in a complete sentence and say, the seahorse lives in a coral reef. I'm going to write that on our card. Now we know our question was, where does the seahorse live? And in complete sentences, our answer becomes, the seahorse lives in a coral reef. We are down to our final two index cards. Let's start with this one here. This is the why question card. For this card, we have to think of why an event happened in the story. Let's take a look back. Looking back at the story, why does the seahorse do something? We have to think of that something. Well, we can ask, why does the seahorse like his home? This question can be answered a bunch of different ways. So for our question, we are going to ask, why does the seahorse like where he lives? Here is our why question. Why does the seahorse like his home? Well, let's look back at our story to answer our question. There are multiple different answers that could answer this question. We can say because he likes to eat his food, because he is safe, or because his friends live there. The best thing about answering your questions is that you can answer them however you want. For the purpose of this, I'm going to answer as because he has a lot of friends. I'm going to write that answer on the back of this why question card. Now we can look back at why does the seahorse like his home, and we answer it in a complete sentence as because the seahorse has friends. Our last question card is the how question. We have to think back to our story on how an event happened within the story. Let's think. Well, we can maybe ask, how does the seahorse swim? This has to do with something that is explained within the story. On our question card, I'm going to write, how does the seahorse swim? Again, our question is, how does the seahorse swim? Let's take one final look at our story to help us answer our question. To answer this, we note the seahorse does not have fins like all the normal fish. It says that he swims like a rocking chair. But instead of just answering it as the rocking chair, we can turn it into the seahorse swims like a rocking chair. I'm going to write that on our answer card. Remember, our question was, how does the seahorse swim? And in a complete sentence answer, we could answer as, the seahorse swims like a rocking chair. We have learned how to create questions and answer them in complete sentences. This is an important skill to have. Thank you guys for paying attention to this video. I hope you learned more about seahorses and sentences. Thank you for learning with us today. We hope you come back and learn more. Please like and subscribe to our channel, and we will be back with more videos.